2022. Solar Week 2022 is brought to us by the Mindanao Go Solar movement, which rallies all Mindanaoans like you and I to move towards a clean energy transition in the region through solar. My name is Grayan Mendoza Araya, an entrepreneur, a wife, a mother, and I'll be walking you through how solar is perfect for our communities, better for our pockets, and great for our municipalities from Monday to Friday, mga higala. So if you're like me, curious, like what is solar technology? How is it going to help us? Makatipid ba ta o mahal ba kaayo? Nako, those questions, all of them, I guarantee, will be answered from Monday to Friday. It's going to be one interesting jam-packed week. And you know what, guys? Every day is a brand new theme. In fact, Karong Monday is all about setting the stage. What is the energy situation in Mindanao? And what is the promise and potential of solar in the region? Tomorrow, Tuesday, is called Technical Day, when we learn about the basics of solar technology and what systems are now available for Mindanao. Wednesday is all about the woke and wise people like you and I who have already chosen to wake up with solar generated electricity. And then there's Thrifty Thursday para sa mga gustong makatipid. Who doesn't like that, right? So we're going to be learning about how to make tipid and the possibilities that comes with solar electricity and solar generated technology. And finally, Feel Good Friday is all about the feels and good vibes about doing something for the environment. So like I said, it's going to be one jam-packed week. So stay with us from Monday to Friday, mga higala. By the way, you can follow us in social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Just look for Mindanao Goes Solar movement. All right. Well, mingaw man kaayo diri karon sa studio, no? So I think mas inspiring sa atong tanan nga naa pa isa ka maanyag nga laka kauban nato karong adlaw. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to welcome my co-host for today, the 2018 second runner-up of Miss Chinatown Philippines. Ladies and gentlemen, Carly Chua. Hi, Carly.
Hi, Gray! Og maayong hapon sa tanan natong mga viewers, no? Labi na sa tanang mga Bisaya na lumulupyo sa Mindanao. Maayong hapon kaninyong tanan. I am so happy that I was invited to be part of this program for a week-long celebration of this program. So maraming salamat po. And I can't wait to kickstart our week-long celebration, most especially that we are going to jot down a lot of takeaways on how we can preserve, of course, our Mother Earth and how we can help in our small ways as citizens of our Earth. Daghang kayo salamat, Grace. Right. I hope atong mga viewers na nakatambay lang, no?
You're in Davao right now, right? Diba?
Yes, right now I'm in Davao. And basin next month, na ako dira sa CDO puhon-puhon.
Wow. That would be great to meet you in person, Carly, no? And I'm sure the people of CDO would love to have you here on a regular basis. Naku,
thank you very
much. By the way,
much.
guys,
yes.
Carly, for those of you who don't know, Carly is actually a very well-known influencer in Davao City.
Wow.
So I hope that she will also carry out the advocacies of solar energy. Diba? Dagan tagbatunan karon, Carly.
That's true, Gray. And I understand that we have a video feature about solar produced by the Mindanao Go Solar movement.
Yes, Carly. And actually, in fact, this is going to be the first time that this video will be aired. So we're all very honored to see this. So ladies and gentlemen, let's watch this.
Welcome to my home, Mindanao. Ginatawag ang Mindanao nga land of promise. Pero as promising as this part of the Philippines is, kulang paghihapon ang atong electric infrastructure. Kabalo ba mo nga it is estimated that roughly 70% sa mga panimalay ug mga establishments kay gakuha sa ilang supply sa kuryente sa grid. Pero ang nahibilin nga 20% are left in the dark. Walay kuryente o gapangita o lain nga pamaagi para makakuha og kuryente. Pero naatay solusyon. And it is my good old friend, solar energy. Nganong maayo nindot og baskog ang solar energy? Well, because solar energy is free, it is renewable, it is good for the planet, ug labi na, it has now become more available and affordable compared sa niagi. Pero kabalo ba atong average nga Mindanawan kung unsa gyud ang solar energy ug unsa ang mga benepisyo nga imo makuha kung ikaw mag-transition sa paggamit sa solar? Kuyugi ko ninyo, kaya atong pangutanon atong mga amigo ug amiga sa kadalanan kung unsa ilang thoughts kabahin sa solar energy. Tara! Murag na ako'y nakitaan dito. Hello, Miss Ate Girl. Miss Ate Girl. Sir, mayong hapon.
Hello.
Ako dahil si Val. Sir, pwede mo lingkod, sir? Muni ang 1 million peso question.
Good.
Ang Miss Universe ni. Mayong buntag, palihog kog introduce sa imong kaugalingon.
I'm Jovelyn Batong.
Ako si Michael Abonitalias.
Ako si Casey. I'm Mrs. Janessa Camado.
Ako si Ralph Christian Takastakas.
The first question, what do you think is solar energy?
For me, solar energy is renewable source of energy.
Renewable siya. So it means that dili siya mahurot. Magamit na to siya again and again. And then, makuha na po dato siya sa environment.
Solar energy, gikan sa sun? Yeah, I think it's a really good investment.
Something new to me, but I think it's a good source of energy.
Ang solar energy, isa siya sa mga pamaagi nga makatabang sa atong environment karon.
Especially diri sa Philippines because we are a nation of sunshine. Pero gamay ra gyud ang mga tawo nga naay solar energy sa Philippines. I wonder why.
Ang solar energy kay radiation lang na siya gikan sa sun, which is capable of producing heat, causing chemical reactions, or generating electricity. Ang sumatotal nga gidaghanon sa solar energy diri sa atong planeta kay sobra pa kaayo sa current ug anticipated energy requirements sa tibuok kalibutan. Kung maayo pagka-harness, ang solar energy adunay potensyal nga makatagbaw sa tanang energy needs nato sa umaabot nga panahon. Solar technology like solar photovoltaic o solar PV ang maoy ga-convert sa sunlight into useful electricity para mapadagan nato atong mga balay o opisina. Kining solar PV cells maoy makita sa mga solar panels nga usually atong makit-an sa mga atop sa mga balay diri sa Mindanao. Karong 21st century, gilauman nga ang solar energy mahimong mas madanihon isip usa ka renewable energy resource tungod sa dili mahurot nga supply niini ug kay tungod dili kini makapahugaw sa kinaiya, layo ug lahira sa mga fossil fuel sama sa coal ug sa oil.
Among pakatana sa imuha, yes or no? Kabalo ba ka nga pwede ka mokita og kwarta sa paggamit og solar energy sa imong panimalay?
Yes.
Yes? Kabalo ba ka sa konsepto sa net metering sa solar energy? Kadungog na ba ka ana?
Oo, nakabalo ko. Kung nakay solar system sa imong balay, then nakay excess sa imong production sa solar, mobalik to sa kaning power utility, minus din to sa imong cost sa imong nakuha sa ilang nga kuryente or kung mo excess, so posible mo ginansya ka pa sila pa yung magbayad.
Correct! Perfect!
Ang net metering usa ka mekanismo nga nagtugot sa pagbaligya ug pag-export sa sobra nga kuryente nga na-produce gikan sa imong mga solar panel. Sa Pilipinas, usa kini sa mga unang mekanismo nga gipatuman ubos sa Renewable Energy Act of 2008. Ang mga Filipino homeowners ug commercial establishments diri sa Mindanao nga adunay ilang kaugalingong solar installations kay makahatag sa ilang sobra nga kuryente nga na-generate ngadto sa electric grid sa ilang distribution utility ug gamiton sa pag-offset sa ilang konsumo sa kuryente. In short, ang end users ang mahimong prosumers o mga producer ug consumer sa kuryente. Ang gawas ani kay ang end users kay makakuha og savings sa ilang bayranan sa kuryente ug maprotektahan ang ilang kaugalingon batok sa pagtaas sa presyo sa kuryente.
Right, na ako usa lang kapangutana sa imuha sir about solar energy. So mo ni ang 1 million peso question.
Good.
Kung imo ning makuha, nakay joke lang. Ang question kay kabalo ba ka sir nga ang paggamit og solar energy kay good investment para sa imong panimalay?
Yes. I would agree. Kung tanaw na ako in a bigger perspective, this is what we are investing in the future, man. Even sa mong company, gagamit namin og solar in terms of alternative use sa energy. I would agree. It's a great benefit for all of us. And I think further down the years, siguro, I think mo ginamay mo major ata nga source of energy po. Ako personally, I would even invest pohon kung napukoy balay po for solar.
Pohon, it's a thumbs up for sir. Good investment ang solar energy. Thank you kayo, sir.
Sige, may problema.
Ang pagbutang og solar sa imong atop kay makatabang nimo nga malikayan ang pagtaas sa presyo sa kuryente pinaagi sa pag-produce sa imong kaugalingon nga kuryente sa equivalent rate nga dili gyud musaka tungod kay ang gigikanan sa imong fuel which is ang adlaw kay libre. Wala pa gyud mahitabo sa Mindanao nga niubos ang presyo sa kuryente. Mao nga ang pagpamuhunan sa solar, mao ang pagpamuhunan sa imong kaugalingon nga power plant nga nagpadayon sa pagtaas sa kantidad, kadugayan samtang nagtaas ang presyo.
What do you think is the environmental benefits of solar energy? And do you think naay environmental benefits ang solar energy?
Yes, na siya environmental benefit. Ang cool magud kay after magamit na put to waste. And then ang iya pong kuan, ang aso makakos siya og air pollution while ang solar energy wala gyud as in limpyo gyud kay siya and makatipid ka sa kuryente.
Ayun, limpyo ang solar energy straight from Ma'am Janessa. Thank you kayo.
Ang mga solar energy technologies ug mga solar power plants kay dili makaproduce og air pollution or greenhouse gases kung ga-operate. Sa Mindanao ug bisan asa pa, ang paggamit sa solar energy adunay positive effect sa kinaiyahan kung kini mo puli o mumenos sa paggamit og hugaw nga energy sources. Ang solar kay ga-produce og kuryente nga walay pagsunog og fuel, dili sama sa coal, oil ug gas. Busa, makatabang kini nga mahimong limpyo ug presko ang hangin ug ang palibot.
Okay, Casey, akong pangutana sa imo, ikaw ba o sa Kamindanawan?
Yes, very proud Mindanaoan.
Very proud Mindanawan. And do you think solar energy will benefit Mindanao?
I think so. Kay daghan paghihapon sa Mindanao ang walay kuryente. Yeah, ay kato ako mga hometown before wala paghihapon hangtod karon even tubig. So I think it's really one of the biggest problem here in the Philippines and in Mindanao.
Thank you. O, tinuod usa ni siya kada nga problema nga pwede nato solusyonan ug ato yung masolusyonan because there is a solution.
Yeah.
And that is solar energy. Thank you kayo, Casey.
Ang Mindanao adunay pinakaubos nga electrification rates sa tulo ka major island groups, which means mas daghan ang solar kay makaprovide og kuryente diretso sa mga balay sa katawhan nga dili manginahanglan og transmission lines and towers. Asa nga distribution utility sa Mindanao. Kini nga problema kay masulbad pinaagi sa sa dako kaayo og mga benepisyo ang solar alang sa tibuok Mindanao region.
Solar energy is clearly the future of Mindanao. Ug diri sa Pilipinas, unlimited ang atong sunshine. Pero usahay, gareklamo ta nga init ra kaayo. But why don't we regard this as a blessing to our islands? A blessing nga kung atong gamiton og tarong kay makahatag sa ato sa tanan energy nga atong kailangan para mapadagan atong mga panimalay ug mga negosyo. Power and energy that is not only free but also good for the environment. And that, my friends, is a sunny future that I would gladly drive into.
One sunny future gyud, Carly, di ba? Kung ato lang ma-harness gyud og tarong kining free energy unta ang gikan sa adlaw. So, Carly, it's really really ironic because Mindanao is the biggest island in the Philippines if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken. So, kita pag hinuon ang alaot pag-abot sa kuryente, daghang pag
Mm-hmm.
communities nga walay kuryente. So, I think it's about time that the private and the public sector really just join hands to make sure
Mm-hmm.
nga ato aning magamit nga feature no nga benefits sa solar energy. What do you
Yes,
think?
it can reach out to different parts of Mindanao, no? Hilabi na knowing what, of course, the video presentation was all about. Sige, tagreklamo po na, who's atang inita? Labi na karon na it's summer already, di ba? But
True.
come to think of it, ang kainit di ay makahatag og benepisyo sa ato most especially now that I know that we are slowly coping up with the new normal, but still we are in a pandemic. But dako na kaya na siya na-tick sa ato ang mga expense list, knowing that it can diminish a percentage sa atong mga bill. Tinuod kayo na, di ba? Kaya atong pandemic, dili na to, wala may discount, wala 50% sa atong tubig,
True.
sa atong kuryente, and we have been using it all throughout. So hopefully this week-long program of ours would also be a blessing sa lahat ng mga Mindanaoans out there watching us live right now to really be taking into details what we are going to talk through this afternoon.
That's right, Carly, and I agree totally with you, no? Especially
Mhm.
the pandemic showed us how vulnerable we are, yun,
Totoo.
financially, economically. So dapat di ay kung makasave, then let's
Mhm.
let's go there, right? So daghan pa
Yes.
kita gusto matunan, and we
Mhm.
really today is about learning the basics, right, Carly? So
Mhm.
please allow us to welcome our first speaker for the day to give us a bit of scientific background to the conversation about solar and its potential in Mindanao. We have an esteemed scientist and engineer with us today, right, Carly?
Yes, tama ka dyan, Gray. And we are very privileged enough to be taken his time off his busy schedule to be with us as we walk through our program this afternoon. So, ladies and gentlemen, he is involved in environmental planning, civil and environmental engineering. Since 2014, he has been a faculty member of the Xavier University Civil Engineering Department and concurrently, since 2015, the program coordinator for disaster risk, environment, and management at the XU ERC. His research interests are in geomatics, remote sensing, urban planning, disaster resilience, and the environment. He has presented research work and published papers in reputable journals in the Philippines and abroad. Currently, he is the component leader for HEVR GIS, mapping of the Mindanao Clean Energy Living Laboratories research funded by the European Union. He and his team are currently developing potential maps for renewable energy in solar, hydro, biomass, and wind, which they hope to aid planners and decision makers in properly situating power generation for Mindanao. Everybody, let us all virtually welcome Engineer Jefferson Ramos Valiente Jr.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Miss Carly, for
Good
that
afternoon,
mouthful
sir.
description of my work. No, sorry for the lengthy words and descriptions. No, so let me share my screen. Okay. So my presentation for this afternoon will delve into the scientific part of mapping solar. No, for so long, no, our idea of solar is that it is just an appendage sa atong mga balay that we can just add just to save energy. But all the more when we mapped out the sources, we knew, and we are still knowing, no, some parts of it, that we can actually help the environment from coping with disaster risks, and even in reducing our carbon footprint. So this presentation will cover some of the basics of what we know so far sa solar, and also a little bit about the project that we're currently working on together with other Ateneo institutions that includes Ateneo de Manila, Manila Observatory, ICLEI, XU, and also University of San Carlos in Cebu. So the ASAP Cells project is actually funded by the European Union. No? this implemented by ASUG, which is situated in Ateneo de Manila, and in Mindanao, XU is its partner. So the general objective of the project is really to create center of excellence in sustainable energy, and primarily it aims to satisfy SDG number 7. No, so there are three centers currently operating in the Philippines. Having mentioned in Luzon, it's Ateneo de Manila. In Cebu, it's University of San Carlos, and here in Cagayan de Oro, it's in XU, which also covers the project sites in Mindanao. So we aim to satisfy SDG number 7, which is related to cheap and clean energies. And it's also connected to other SDGs, no? Kasi when we work for power, it also includes economics, food supply, and even some of the environmental concerns that currently we are facing. So clean energy is the aim for this one, no? And we hope that by satisfying SDG number 7, we also satisfy all other SDGs, no, for the greater development of society. So the objective of our team's efforts really is for to respond to energy challenges and also sustainable production and consumption. No, dili man sab na nga okay we go for solar but then we don't consensuously practice no consumption values. No, so we also educate people on this aspect. One part of it is energy efficiency, where we teach and do research on how we can better consume energy instead of just wasting them no for other uses, but rather to use it for proper usage. So we work with sustainable knowledge management systems, learning opportunities, and public awareness. So we're happy that this movement has also invited us to share our insights on solar. No, and if you need to access other information, you can just contact us through our email, which I'll show in the last slide. And this also aims to satisfy energy access for all, energy efficiency, and also share our knowledge on renewables and in the mix, no, such as these are EA, and RE. Now, our group really belongs to researchers or the scientific community and the academe, no? And we work in universities and schools, and we partner with some NGOs, some national agencies, and primary to that is DOE, no? So we don't just partner with the private sector, but also the government, um, because they're also the number one implementer of some of these RE projects guided by law. Now, the component that we're working, no, we aim to map out and profile energy sources in Mindanao. So, having mentioned by Miss Carly earlier, we work with solar, wind, biomass, and even hydro. So, with solar, we found that it's one of the best alternative in terms of providing energy access. No, we saw that in far-flung communities, it's easy to set up solar, and also with areas stricken by disasters. No, we learned this one better during Odette. No, much of the grid was destroyed. No, in that portion in Mindanao, and with the advancement of deploying solar, no, small solar cells. No, this can better aid in disaster response. So when we map out the solar potential of Mindanao per region, no, you see here maps with color gradients from yellow to red. No, zones in red are actually good for solar. This is considering that the sun is really giving off enough energy. And one factor for this one is really elevation. No, normally if you're in a higher elevation, pag naka sa bukid, solar is not that good as a resource compared to those living in the coastal and in the plains, no? Kasi pag naka sa ibabaw, naka sa bukid, you have fog, you also have tree cover, no? Which could decrease the amount of energy that you can get, no? So we see here that mostly cities, no, located in coastal areas our plains, no, most where we also have farms for agriculture, these are areas good for solar. But overall, if your use is just for individual consumption, meaning sa balay lang, generally you can use solar to provide for your needs. No, we only use these maps if a grid, for example, no, for example, si Palco is interested to expand, no, its solar mix. So we look at these maps, such as this one that we generated, for considering great or larger potential sites. No, so these are used by planners. No? Another way of getting an advantage with solar is that it can reduce our CO2 emissions. No? In the short term, we believe that solar can reduce our CO2 emissions because there is lesser demand for fossil fuels. No? However, we also see some negative effects of solar, especially the device that tries to collect, no, the energy. In the future, if infrastructure and even the government will not ramp up its policies for recycling these solar cells, no, we might see them in our landfills. And so far, there are no clear plans, no, on how to recycle solar panels, and also there are no facility yet to cater them. No, so for better adaptation in the near future, no, solar panels usually expire for 10 to 20 years. No, and you need to throw them away, no, unless you have other uses for it. No, so in the shorter years, we find solar to be effective on that timeline. Now we can also sort of solve, no, how solar can be positioned in certain areas, and not just to give you the full science out of it. No, we generated this workflow on how you can sort of select the solar site if you have some scientific information. No? For example, you have areas near to roads, no, kasi you cannot construct a solar panel farm, especially in farms away from the road. No, it's difficult for transporting the equipment. No, however, for individual purposes, no, you may not need this workflow. No, but if you're interested na dinagko, no, those for farms, no, so we use this one. So what parameters were considered here? No, generally we saw proximity to a certain infrastructure. No, the road, that is one consideration. The other one is if you are near a power distribution company, or even if you're near a transmission line for easier transmission of the power, no? Especially kung large ang imuhang production, so you might need to partner with a distribution utility. So the general concept of solar is just to tap the energy of the sun, no, through panels, and then you will have controllers. You may need to store them in batteries, and then use it directly for light bulbs. Or if you want it to be sold, no, in the grid, you might need inverters. Kasi the source is basically from a battery, which is direct, and what you use in the house is alternating current. So there should be some conversion going on in the system. No, one challenge also for solar, which I think most companies are solving today, is the battery issue. No, so if you need large storage, no, if you want to be 100% reliant to solar, you need efficient batteries. No, yung mga car battery sa sakyanan, it can hold only a small portion, no? And it can also power smaller appliances, no? Like light bulbs, no? Some cases refrigeration can be, no? Pero if you want it to have 24/7 air conditioning units, no? I think car batteries will not be enough for that, no? So there are different considerations for storage in the house, no? If you want that. Now, with that, Mindanao really has high potential for solar power, no? It's because we have the land, partly because of that, no? And also of our location, no? Compared to those located above us, no, sa north, they have problems with solar kasi snow is not good for solar, no? Compared to us now, wala, may snow dire, and we only have cloudy days and even rainy days, no, which has minimal impact in solar panels unless if the area is flood prone, no? So dili gid ka operate ang solar in that case. So we've presented these several parameters to see where in Mindanao can we possibly have solar farms, no? Because it's not good to invest solar farms if the area is not really good for producing power. So we presented this one with variable efficiency, suitability, and the associated risks. No, so later I'll also show you one map, no, where you can see where in Mindanao can you have solar panels if you're considering for flood. No, in terms of the land where you can use it for solar, now what we see here are areas in yellow which are actually urban zones, agricultural zones, which you can set up solar panels or even farms. No, areas in white are forested zones. No, this should not be used for solar, all because it defeats the purpose, no, of reducing carbon emissions. No? There are also initiatives now. We can actually build solar panels floating in water bodies. No? So maybe that's a good opportunity soon for Mindanao to invest for solar panels na floating across our um, bodies of water. No? Luag man ang dagat. Then we also have large lakes which we can have floating solar PVs. No? So we saw that in this map na there are really areas that we can use solar for. Population is also one factor, no. Di man ka makabaligya og solar if gamay ang population, no. So we see here from the population map, no. This is a range per province. We see here na ang areas in red, these have high demand because population with high numbers will really demand for power, no. So this portion in Davao really has high population. That's why I think that the grid also there transitioned from a cooperative to a private owned, no, company, all because the need and the demand was high enough. We also see some other cities, no, which has high demand, no. That's why we have one company, or rather, no, many companies in Cagayan de Oro, but Greenergy is one that is quite popular in Cagayan. This is because high urbanized cities, no, also has high demand for solar as an alternative to what is being supplied in the grid, no. And with what we do in research, we also saw that people will tend to demand for solar if there are many power interruptions. And normally, the cause of these power interruptions is when we transition to um, days in a year where there is high demand and when supply is low. And usually, this happens during drought seasons. No? So, pag drought, wala man kayo ulan, wala kayo clouds, so solar is high. No? So, we see that as a game changer for advancing for solar. And supply is primarily given also to these cities, no? So, like Sipalco has their own solar farm, and some other cities, HUCs in general, with industrialized zones, not to hamper their operation, so they prefer na dapat may alternative source, which is solar, no? And apart from this, our law also encourages, no, distribution utilities to add renewables and energies in the mix, no. So what we pay in our bills, a portion of that is invested for renewable energies, no. So just like in Sipalco, we had to, or rather the grid, no, and the distribution utility preferred to have solar, no, rather than really investing on other renewables na that can destroy the environment, no. So one example for that is hydro, no. So dili man sa tanang panahon si hydro is good, no. Even solar, no. But we see nga si solar is better as an alternative to hydro. We can also see where the road networks are kasi kung may road, mas dali ang access to this uh, renewable energy. So we see nga these areas are really good for development for solar. No, southern Mindanao is good. especially that they have plains, no? Wala kayo obstruction from mountains and even portions of there are parts in Bukidnon in the upper plains which can be developed for solar. However, they are used for agricultural crops. No? We can perhaps mix that, no? But there's no parang attempt yet to mix everything that farmers will gain something if they offer a solar farm or in that case solar or renewable energy from solar. Okay. There are also zones, specific zones in Mindanao that we need to watch for development from solar, no? Like in northern Mindanao, we don't advise that solar farms are situated on protected areas, no? So we see them in green here, no? Itong mga forested zones, no? So we don't need to cut trees just to accommodate solar farms, no? And solar farms actually require space. So some zones here in the circles, we found that since they are located in urban cities and that they are in plains, they are ideal for solar. Okay. Apart from that, if you also consider nga baka bulupad ang panel, no, during storms, no. So um, area sa Mindanao nga we might better prepare our panels against high winds, especially if gaagian siya sa bagyo, no. So in the northeastern portion of Mindanao and also in northern Mindanao, no, we might watch that that the solar PV system be consulted with a structural engineer, especially if it's mounted on top of your roof, no. Kasi it might be the reason nga mulupad ang imong roof, no. So watch out lang if ever you have this system in your household, no. And better consult professionals. So it can be designed na it will not cause further harm or rather disasters in an area. Okay. We also mapped out areas where there are higher events of earthquakes, no? Normally, solar panels are not sensitive to earthquakes, no? It can continue operations, no, pag may earthquake. And even kung after a big earthquake, no, just like what happened in Kidapawan and Southern Mindanao years ago, no, we can really set up emergency facilities using solar. So really that's an opportunity because it's easier to set up. Just need a panel, some batteries, and the connection can be used for basic lighting or perhaps basic functions in an office or in the household. So there are areas that are good opportunities for disaster response using solar, no. So number one, getting northeastern, no. Just recently, because of Odette, we saw that solar PV systems are good as an alternative to the grid supply. So if we also map out distribution utilities against storm shocks, no, we see that these portions in northeastern Mindanao are sensitive to storms, no. Pag may storm, mapalong gina siya ang power, no, kay our power lines are exposed, no. Dili man ta pareha sa uban countries nga ang ilahang power lines, no, are underneath the soil. So if ever na strong winds, di sila maapektahan. Well sa ato naman sa taas. So normally gid na pag kusog kay mga hangin, matumba and we don't have power, no. So it can run from days, weeks, and even months, no. So we saw that experience with Odette. So there are areas where we can better serve communities if really we jump for solar, no, as an alternative to what's available in the grid. No. We also generated field validation surveys, no, just to see how really solar the measurement of solar power in some areas, no. So itong map sa taas, this is done in Claveria, no, and we see some downtrends, no? Kaning nag-dip ang mga lines, no? This usually happens pag moagi ang fog, no? So pag moagi ang fog, mugamay ang solar PV output, no? So one thing also to watch for areas nga ibabaw kayo sa bukid, no? Muna siya nga we kind of not encourage, no, solar PV setups kung foggy kayong area. It may reduce the the output. But with better design, siguro that's why consulting to professionals will also be better. They can design the system to accommodate your needs if ever mudip ang atong supply, no. We also did the same scenario sa Alubihid here in the map, no. You see nga tag-as kaayo ang range, no, and makabawi gid ang solar even if na ay clouds nga mo cover, no. Compared to hydro nga kung mauga wala kay power, no? Sa solar imo lang is 6 to 6 as long as na sunshine, no? And dili kayo siya sensitive kung nay fog, nay clouds kumbaga, as long as na-design imong system to accommodate those minor changes, no. Now, we also made a case study in Cagayan, no? Interestingly, most of us here are from Cagayan de Oro. So, we created a map trying to ask the question, asa ang pwede mag-build og kanang solar panels, no? So, we considered perhaps the location if um, okay ang soil, no? Muning na yellow. Next is kung duol sa dalan. So, we see here the pink map. And then if good ang output, no, so we see here nga kaning portion diri sa Bayabas, Kauswagan, Bulwa have high PV output, no. And then if we also consider the slope, no, ang ka-slope sa yuta. And together we created scores, and you see here in the map, no, kanigid siya downtown area, some parts of uptown are good for solar, no. Generally speaking, kung solar farm imong apas, no. So we see here nga ang Indahag red, no. So good ang location ana, no, kadtong sa Sipalco nga station. But other areas, we might find it difficult to build solar, no. But generally, to accommodate the large population, we see naman nga kung asa located ang red colors, dito po daghan population, no. So they can be or they can put up solar panels in these zones because of that. And then, if we also ask the question nga, what if magbaha? Bumugin na isa ka concern sa solar. Kay if your solar is located or your panel is located on the ground, basig mabahaan, no? So we also generated a map, no, with our partners in Manila Observatory, showing you this first map, no. This is solar energy potential due to flood, no. So you see nga kanang areas dira nga medyo dark, these have high risk to solar. High risk to flood if you build up a solar panel. So, kumbaga, you can still build solar panels, no? But watch lang that these solar panels will not be located too low. Okay, basig mabahaan lang siya. Sayang imong investment. So, if ever you want to develop it more for solar pero flood prone, perhaps you consult professionals so you can create a design nga maybe it's mounted on a tower or perhaps it's located somewhere above the flood prone zones, no. And interestingly, if you also map out all of the Philippines for its power potential for solar, we see here na Mindanao really has good, no, potential, especially the islands, no, for Basilan, Zamboanga, no, also even in some parts of Jensan, no. These are good zones for solar, considering only the output. Other than that, you may need to reconfigure your setup to accommodate some environmental changes. Okay. Okay. I'll just want also to show this one that if you're interested also to see real time how each of the environmental hydrological variables affect, no, the grid, no. You can use our application WebGrid, and later we will be launching that some of the layers here will have solar PVs with distribution utilities, no. So you will know if your distribution utility is prone to a storm that's coming, and that will help you prepare for it, no. Baka you need to set up your emergency kits and then better prepare your household if there is a power interruption, no. So we're also developing this one for Mindanao. Okay, so that ends my presentation, no. I hope you learned some things or two, no, on where to set up solar panels, some of the hazards that you need to watch when you build one, and if you need more information, you may contact us through our email. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Engineer Jefferson Valiente Jr. That was in-depth and totally understandable. Usahay manggod pag technical kaayo lisod na kay Sabton, but
Mhm.
kudos to you guys and your team for making it understandable for our viewers today. We appreciate everything that you do for Mindanao. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Engineer. And talagang saludo po kami sa trabaho ninyo kasi hindi po biro yung mga pinaggagawa ninyo. Lalong-lalo na po in implementing solar energy and of course information to us Mindanaoans. So maraming salamat po.
Daghang salamat, Engineer. Carly, it's about time to introduce our keynote speaker for today. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. And Carly, would you do the honor of introducing our keynote speaker for the day, please?
Yes, great talaga namang. It's indeed my honor to introduce our keynote speaker this afternoon. I know that he is quite busy, but talagang pinaglaanan niya tayo ng oras ngayong hapon na ito. Ladies and gentlemen, he is the Deputy Executive Director and concurrent Head of Investments Promotion, International Relations, and Public Affairs of the Mindanao Development Authority, or MINDA, the principal government agency mandated to coordinate the integrated development of Mindanao. He also has the technical working group of the Mindanao Power Monitoring Committee, an interagency body chaired and co-chaired by MINDA and DOE to spearhead efforts for long-term Mindanao power development and energy transition. He holds a master's degree in public administration from the Ateneo de Davao University. He also studied peace journalism at the Center for Peace and Conflict Studies, University of Sydney, Australia, under a scholarship grant from the Australian Agency for International Development. He also received international training on trade facilitation in ASEAN economies, low emission development strategy, economic corridors development in Asia, and regional power market and cross-border interconnection in ASEAN, held in Singapore, Thailand, and South Korea. Ladies and gentlemen, we are very honored this afternoon. Help me and join me in welcoming Assistant Secretary Romeo M. Montenegro. Good afternoon, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Carly and Grian. I am honored to be given this opportunity to present the context of opportunities for renewable energy development, especially for solar, here in Mindanao, which is essentially a major part of the priority thrusts of the Mindanao Development Authority as we pursue overall strategies of energy transition. So let me briefly walk you through this afternoon through the following slides in so far as these very specific activities undertaken by the Mindanao Development Authority in partnership with the multilateral partners, official development assistance or ODAs, such as the European Union delegation to the Philippines and the private sector. All right. Just for context, again, to bring us back to the very reason why we are here this afternoon in this online discussion, what's in it for us as audience, for instance, discussion in terms of how viable and why should solar be pursued, be promoted as a major source of electricity here in Mindanao. Well, let's go back to the main rationale of all of these things, the totality of everything that we are currently facing all across, not just in Mindanao or the Philippines, but globally. And that's why last year, a recent gathering of global leaders had put forward key updates in terms of specific commitments of certain countries or most countries all over the world in terms of our contribution to reducing the GHG emission and therefore promoting more of renewable energy as major sources of electricity. And we've seen this massively being done in many countries. India, many European countries, and even China, Germany, for instance, and several other countries in Europe, transitioning into solar technology as major source of electricity. And in fact, it's projected that there's going to be several hundred gigawatts of electricity going to be derived from solar in the next 50 years. So the question is, where is Mindanao and where is Philippines in that very important contribution. Now, why do we care in the first place? Why do we have to move towards understanding why solar technology is important or why renewable energy matters? Because it impacts the earth. Why do we care? Because, well, we have the earth as our only planet. Unless you are from somewhere else. If you happen to be from the other universe and not the earth, then probably you would not care about the earth having to go through this climate change that we are now seeing unfolding. Climate change, which many years ago were just probably concepts, but today already had become harsh realities. And not just Visayas and Luzon, but Mindanao. These are frightening realities that are already in our face. Sendong, Pablo, Yolanda, and the latest ones, Odette, which struck the island provinces of Dinagat as well as Siargao. Philippines, for one, today is already had to gear up with these realities of being regularly visited by storm and with Mindanao already at the front line. 10 years ago, we were proud in saying that Mindanao is typhoon free, probably 12 years ago. But the last 12 years, two of the most devastating typhoons that struck the Philippines passed by Mindanao. And another important realities that we have to reckon with in Mindanao is that we have so much of the river basins located in Mindanao. In fact, 8 out of the 18 major river basins in the Philippines are in Mindanao. That's why if we continue to do business as usual with the storms getting in, well, regular frequency and with rains becoming torrential, then immediately we would expect floodings to occur even in our urban areas. But on the other flip side of the coin, by which we should therefore understand why nature had to be reckoned with the technology that we are already promoting today, is the strength of Mindanao, our strength in agriculture. In fact, in the last 2 years of pandemic, while many other industries have closed shop, Mindanao continued to send our exports of bananas, pineapples, tuna, canned sardines, and many other agricultural products across key market destinations in the last 2 years, even while they are in lockdown, only indicating that indeed Mindanao is resilient. But that will not stay long if we don't pay heed to the realities of our environment today. For instance, if you looked at the map, this is where the spread of our agricultural production is in Mindanao. And the spread as well of areas where there are so much high poverty incidents. In areas where forests are denuded, farmlands are being threatened with not sustainable agricultural practices and therefore something that will have to form part of our advocacy, of our strategy, of our long-term planning moving forward. Because based on studies, this is what they saw in Mindanao or projected for Mindanao 30 years, 15 years down the road in terms of areas that are going to be very hot or very wet. It goes to those extremes unless something is done as early as now or as early as yesterday for us to contribute towards reducing GHG emission. For instance, Mindanao today only has about less than 6% forest cover. 100 years ago, we have about 80% forest cover in Mindanao. But as of 2010, it's down to 6% and further down to less than 6% today. Bakit? Siyempre, pinuputol ang mga kahoyan. We pursued, we promoted to a certain extent in many areas unsustainable farming practices that affected our forest cover. And thereby resulting to floodings left and right. And even here in Davao City, we're not spared. In our urban areas, are not spared from floodings that are occurring on a more frequent basis this time around. Because of these realities, that storms now, at certain degrees, have the storm path have altered to a certain degree, to certain degrees as well, passing by Mindanao and no longer just directly hitting Visayas and Luzon. And henceforth, giving us these harsh realities. And in fact, experts pointed out that the COVID pandemic that we are in today was also or is also a result of climate change. Therefore, we have to understand all those contexts, why we need to push for energy transition, especially here in Mindanao. This is one other very important reason. About 10 years ago or so, or 15 years ago, Mindanao prides itself as being the show of renewable energy all over the Philippines. The solar power plant of Sipalco, which Engineer Jefferson had cited earlier, was the first ever solar power plant in the Philippines. And combined with hydro and geothermal, accounts for 70% of our energy sources in Mindanao. That's why we are having the cheapest electricity rates all over the country years ago. Well, an ideal reality. However, in the last 8 years, 2,400 megawatts of coal-fired power capacities were built in Mindanao. However, at this point in time, already dominating our energy mix. And if you look at the orange line, that accounts for the extent of coal contribution to our energy mix in Mindanao. And so that in 2015, hydro was supposed to be about 50% of our energy mix, with coal 14%. But in 2017 alone, that had already reversed the energy mix. If you combine coal and oil-based or diesel power plants, for instance, that already account for 70% of our energy mix here in Mindanao. And that's why if you are the ones paying for your electricity bills in your households, hindi mga nanay at tatay nyo, you will feel the pinch because of our higher electricity rates today. Electricity rates that are sourced mainly from coal that is 100% imported from Indonesia, subject to market volatility and foreign exchange fluctuations. And that's why, with the kind of economic challenge that we are facing today, with the war in Ukraine, with the spiking prices of oil and fuel, and the escalation rates as well of the global market price of coal, and then therefore, let's expect our electricity bills to be going up higher. And for the next 10, 20 years, this is what we're looking at as a possible scenario of additional energy required from Mindanao, given our demand. Our economy in Mindanao is growing at a rate much faster than the national average. We're growing at an average of 6.5% GRDP. National average is only around 5.9 to 6.0. So mas mabilis ang takbo ng ekonomiya ng Mindanao in the last 15 years. Every growth of our industries, every mall that is built, every tower that is constructed would require electricity. And then if you count in pa the expansion of real estate projects, the mushrooming of malls and subdivisions, then you add that up in terms of requirement for electricity. And therefore, in Mindanao, we will need around 10,000 megawatts of additional capacity by 2040, around 1,500 megawatts by 2030. That's about 8 years from now. Question is, where do we get that electricity sources to be able to provide to our growing economy? If we do business as usual, if we don't pay heed to the current realities, and if we don't want to embrace energy transition, then the technology of choice for many of the investors should be fossil technology. Unless we become strong, we become one, and we become loud in our voice in terms of putting forward renewable energy as better sources of electricity, especially for Mindanao in the next 8 years. Electricity that should power not just our households, but will value add our agricultural commodity. In Minda, we always looked at the value adding and the direct relationship of renewable energy such as solar to power our agriculture value chain. Bakit? In many of the rural areas, especially in the off-grid areas, in the island provinces, for instance, that was cited by Engineer Jefferson, these are mostly areas where the paying capacity of the consumers are not the same in the mainland, Mindanao, for instance. So yung purchasing power nila talagang mababa, and so that they would not be able to pay for electricity. But if their electricity is being made available to increase their income because their products are being value added and processed, and therefore we can expect sustainability of such services. Therefore, if their agricultural output are further expanded, then we can penetrate more of our global markets. Because today, as we see it, we're already on this in terms of our global positioning for Mindanao agricultural production. We are number 2 in the world in terms of banana, number 3 in terms of seaweeds, number 4 in terms of pineapple, number 7 in terms of rubber, and number 8 in terms of tuna, so on and so forth. And these are just Mindanao. Hindi pa nga kasali dito ang Visayas and Luzon because all of these agricultural commodities are dominantly at an average of 60 to 80% produced in Mindanao. 99% of the country's rubber output is produced in Mindanao, particularly in Basilan, Zamboanga Sibugay, and North Cotabato. Therefore, the question is, how do we relate renewable energy such as solar to our agriculture viability in Mindanao? In Minda, in partnership with USAID and several other agencies, such as the Climate Change Commission, we are putting linkage between water, energy, and food. You have to relate all of these three for us to be able to put together a better strategy moving forward. Taking one out or any one of the three of the water, energy, food nexus is going to be something that is problematic moving forward, especially in the context of looking at where do we establish our agricultural export zones and what type of energy should be viable for these agri-exports, for instance, for these products to be value added as produced using 100% renewable energy. Because aside from the international standards and certifications such as good agricultural practices, certified single origin, or certified organic, having a standard for a Mindanao product, whether cacao, coffee, banana, as being processed and produced using 100% renewable energy, will fetch higher premium in the international market, given the current trend for cleaner sources of electricity for food production. That's why in Mindanao, we are always looking at the connection of all of these areas to the kind of transport networks that we have and the viability of looking at putting the necessary renewable energy project where these are most needed in these specific areas in Mindanao. And also proactively putting forward propositions of finding a way by which renewable energy can be integrated in the major infrastructure projects that are being promoted in Mindanao. Because many of you have gone to Korea, Australia, and many other countries in Europe. Many of their utilities or, for instance, transportation sector powered already by renewable energy, such as electronic buses and the railways being powered by renewable energy. Something that we hope can be captured as a matter of policy based on the Mindanao 2030 Mindanao Energy Plan, which Minda and DOE had put together about 3 years ago to provide the basis for us in Mindanao moving forward in terms of planning, in terms of strategy, and a reference for the private sector in terms of putting up the kind of projects in the renewable energy. Kasi ang private sector would always look at the policy environment, whether or not it is favorable, whether or not the policies are conducive for such investments. The beauty of renewable energy is that today, because of the Renewable Energy Act, the green energy option, the renewable portfolio standards, and many other policies that are now being made available are making it attractive for renewable energy, such as solar, to be pursued as an investment. Investment because we'd like to look at private sector coming in with their big ticket projects insofar as additional capacities coming from renewable energy. And the link of those projects to value adding our agriculture value chain. Again, going back to the water, energy, food nexus. Because as we see it happening in many areas now, we've seen some of the private sector projects already being able to integrate renewable energy in their entire business operations. Kung siguro makita nyo if you're coming off from Davao, flying or landing inside the plane, and if you look outside, probably your left or your right, you'll see several of the mega warehouses in Davao tadtad ng mga solar panels ang rooftop nila. Several establishments such as mga multipurpose cooperative buildings such as the one in Nabunturan already be able to put up solar above their roof. So apart from household PVs, for instance, we have to look at how the establishment, the malls, the big commercial centers would be able to integrate solar technology as part of their sources of electricity rather than relying heavily from the grid in terms of powering their businesses. And so when we looked at several other areas in Mindanao, for now, for instance, there had been really very focused areas in terms of coming up with the kind of business models to be able to value add agriculture productivity and logistics using renewable energy. RE to be able to power our transport and logistics, RE to power our irrigation facilities in Mindanao, RE for production, and RE for storage. Yung RE for storage, I'd like to cite you a perfect example. We're now looking at this in Glan under an ongoing project and later on in Basilan. Bakit? In Basilan, where galunggong is being sold by the fishermen as only 40 pesos per kilo, mas mahal pa yung block ng ice kaysa per kilo ng isda. And then because of the lack of cold chain facilities, when the galunggong ends up in Visayas, it's already being sold at 300 pesos. And yet, yung earning ng mga taga-Basilan is only about 40 pesos per kilo because of the lack of these facilities. And this is where solar power technology, for instance, can come in to value add these agricultural products in Mindanao. The irrigation, Mindanao still accounts for the largest areas in the Philippines that up until today remains unirrigated. Tayo po, sa buong Pilipinas, dito sa Mindanao, ang lugar na kung saan ang lalawak pa ng mga lugar or areas na walang irrigation. And this is where we find the viability of integrating solar, a source of power, to be able to draw water to irrigate many of our farmlands. Something that very much is an ideal setup, especially during summertime. Pag summertime, tagtuyot, El Nino, walang ulan, and therefore, with the availability of solar, it can draw water from the ground to be able to irrigate our farmlands. An example of this is what we did last year in the fourth-class municipality of Taraca in Lanao del Sur. Assisted by Minda, it was able to put together a bankable project proposal and a 200 million pesos loan from the Development Bank of the Philippines to be able to build 6 solar-powered irrigation projects. Solar-powered facilities that will also power their water system. Kasi yung water sources ng Taraca town is only from the stream nila. But this time around, with electricity being made available coming from solar, for instance, they've been able to tap and have better water facilities, aside from being able to have water for irrigation of their farmlands. Another business model that we are nearly completing, it's about 80% done, funded by the European Union delegation to the Philippines and implemented by UNIDO in partnership with Minda and the National Electrification Administration and several other BARM or the Bangsamoro region offices. We're looking at the completion later on of the renewable energy technology to increase value added of seaweeds in Tawi-Tawi. Tawi-Tawi, southernmost part of the Philippines, lacking in electricity, lacking in water. Yet, 60% of the country's seaweed production, where Philippines, particularly Mindanao, is number 3 in the world, is coming from Tawi-Tawi. So the only way for our seaweed farmers to scale up and bring their products up the value chain is that electricity is being made available. But since ang layo nila from the grid, submarine cable is impossible, impractical because of the distance and the cost. Yet, there is viability for solar to be their main source of electricity. Of course, aside from diesel that are currently available, albeit only on a 12-hour basis. So when you go to the island provinces of Basilan, Sulu, and Tawi-Tawi, electricity is available 24/7 only in the capital towns of Isabela City, of Jolo, as well as in Bongao, Tawi-Tawi. But outside this capital, in the peripheries, there's only 12 hours electricity available. And that's if we wanted to look at transforming these areas in Mindanao, we have to look at the essential requisites of electricity and water. And this is what we hope to accomplish, because later on, this is going to be a scale model or a replicable model for similarly situated areas in the island provinces, where our positioning is that to link the production areas of seaweeds in Tawi-Tawi to the manufacturing corridor of Malaysia. Tawi-Tawi is only about 2 hours away from Malaysia, 12 or 18 hours away from mainland Mindanao or in Zamboanga. That's why it makes sense for that production link to be established with the manufacturing centers of Malaysia, for instance. And that's why creating better income opportunities for our seaweeds farmers or our population in Tawi-Tawi, starting off with making electricity available for them coming from solar. And so this is how we are looking at it over the long term in terms of that project being replicated in several other areas of Tawi-Tawi or the off-grid areas of the island provinces, which do not have any other possible sources of electricity but the solar technology. And this is what we're looking at in terms of impact and benefit later on to the areas covered by this project. Another ongoing project still funded by the European Union, implemented by Minda in partnership with the National Electrification Administration, is what we call integration of the productive uses of renewable energy across 10 pilot sites in Mindanao. Examples of these include solar-powered abaca splending machine, solar-powered coffee dryer, solar-powered corn sheller, solar-powered ice-making machine in specific areas that will provide the viability of scaling up and consolidation so that the farmers in this area that are not being reached by our electric cooperatives will have sources of electricity to value add their commodities and therefore can command better income and better revenues with improved productivity. And hopefully, once completed, this project is set to be replicated in similarly situated off-grid areas in Mindanao, where the most viable source of electricity would be coming from solar technology. So at a glance, this is what we're looking at as a major impact in terms of the beneficiaries, households that can be provided with such services, and a community or sets of communities that are going to be transformed economically because electricity is being made available for them. Over the long term, in the bigger scale and the bigger scheme of projects to be implemented in Mindanao, Minda is glad to be part of what is called the Green Force. It's a team of 18 agencies of the government led by the Department of Finance that is currently working with multilateral partners in terms of identifying very specific projects that can be highlighted later on in terms of energy transition. And in Mindanao, what we are putting together, for instance, is the viability of later on of having more of solar technology being expanded and having some of our coal-fired power plants being converted into LNG fed instead of coal-fed technology or sources of electricity. And this is what exactly this team is doing in terms of looking at the numbers crunching, the commercial viability, and the viability as well of presenting this to private investors, both local and foreign. But all of these, our desire, our aspiration, is definitely not going to move towards rosy road. There's going to be bumps and humps along the way. It's not an easy task. But our march towards full transition to clean energy is going to be possible if all together we work as well. Daghang salamat ug mayong hapon kanatong tanan.
Asek
Thank you
Montenegro,
so much.
maraming salamat po.
Yes,
Yes.
daghang salamat, Asek. Romeo Montenegro, very informative, no? Daghang kayong salamat, Asek. But is it okay if I ask you just one question? May I ask a question, Asek, if that's okay? Okay. Asek, I think you're on mute. Okay, so Asek, you mentioned earlier that Mindanao really is such a great area for solar technology and going solar in general, no? But how do we push this some more? Which sector do we need to convince to make sure that these goals and aspirations really just get the traction that it needs?
Sorry, you're coming in unclear, but I hope I was able to capture the gist of your question in terms of specific sectors and areas that we can focus on in terms of looking at the viability of promoting solar. For one challenge that we have to come to terms with is the difference of the Mindanao situation to Luzon.
Mm-hmm.
Our load curve is different from Luzon. Luzon, the load curve is about 12 to in the afternoon because of the profile, which are mostly commercial establishments, buildings, and industries that are located in Luzon. And that's why solar is viable because daytime, they need the electricity most. In Mindanao, our load curve is 6 in the evening up to about 10 in the evening. So gabi tayo nagkakaroon ng most of the demand for electricity in Mindanao. And that's why this is where we are looking at the kind of mechanism later on that will have to be worked out, where if our solar does not work in the evening, then it can be harnessed daytime in Mindanao, and so that we would be able to reserve many of our runoff rivers in Mindanao that are sources of hydropower plants, be able to conserve water, and so that evening time they would be tapped to run to be able to serve the requirements in the grid. Second, we always looked at the bite-sized capacities. Kasi ang thinking ng iba, let's put up 100 megawatts, 300 megawatts solar, 500 megawatts solar. There's a bit of a challenge to that for now because of the land requirements. The ratio at the moment is already 1:1. Although before, that was 1 megawatt, 5 hectares. But with the improvement of technology in solar, for instance, it's already today 1 megawatt, 1 hectare of land needed to be able to put up the solar farm. And so we have to look at offsetting which areas are no longer viable for agricultural productivity and therefore can be devoted for solar farms, for instance. But then again, we have to look at beyond the large scale capacities. We have to look at solar as something that can be implemented right within our own very households, such as taking advantage of the policies that are being made available. The net metering that was explained earlier is a clear example of how can I personally, probably in my own household, be able to have solar over my rooftop, and so that I can save on my electricity costs here in Davao Light, for instance. Another is establishments. We had a discussion with Nestle Philippines about last year because Nestle is now looking at adhering to their global aspirations of net zero agenda. So many of the multinational companies are now looking at being able to source out electricity for the production of their commodities from renewable energy. And when you talk about Nestle, for instance, Nescafe is being produced where? Right there in Cagayan de Oro City, the country's biggest manufacturing firm for Nescafe. And so Nestle looking at later on producing Nescafe coming from renewable energy sources. So these are some of those we'd like to look at in terms of matching the viability of solar to the needs of specific industries. And so that it is no longer just about building solar plant to sell it to the electric cooperative, but to the direct needs of certain industries and establishments wherever these are most likely viable. So the green energy option is now making it possible. Later on, we are looking forward to the implementation of the wholesale electricity spot market in Mindanao, which is already present in Luzon, wala pa sa atin sa Mindanao. What does it do for us in terms of the viability of solar? If you have solar capacity later on, and wala kang bilateral contract to off-takers such as industries or electric cooperatives, but if there is a market, you can sell your electricity to the market. And because of the protocol that renewable energy will have to be dispatched first over the more expensive fossil, talagang madidispatch ang capacity mo, mabibili ka, magagamit ka, whether or not you have bilateral sales contract with any of the
Makakatipid ka pa,
off-takers.
sir.
That's something that is viable for our solar
Yes.
players by the time we have that market in place.
Thank you so much, Asek, for answering my question. Carly, do you have anything to ask?
Yes, parang may pa-beauty pageant tayo dito, Asek, Romeo, no? But yes, I have only one question also for you, sir. From the last slide being presented earlier, sabi niyo nga po na we can all attain this one if we work together. So personally, I'll ask you this question. Do you have a high confidence that we will make it and be energy independent as Mindanao while helping fight climate change?
We have to start somewhere with
Mhm,
hope and
mhm,
aspiration. We have to be kept motivated by this desire far far extends our lifetime. And therefore, what we do now is not for us. Isipin
mhm,
nila natin para sa mga anak natin in the generations to come, that they won't have to go through the ferocious storms that had um, struck Mindanao about 12 years ago. Let's aspire that the kind of future we will have will be a future where renewable energy is also being made possible as the 100%, or if not 100%, the dominant source of electricity in Mindanao. So our target in Minda is to bring back 50-50 energy mix by 2030. And so there are
mhm,
very specific strategies being worked out right now to be able to achieve that target. And so the 1,500 megawatts of additional power capacities from power plants that will have to be built between now and 2030 should be coming mostly from renewable energy. And a large part of
Uh-huh.
this would be coming from solar. So that's how we are looking at it in terms of achieving and translating those aspirations into measurable and achievable specific targets.
Yes. Asek, you spoke of strategies just a few minutes ago, just a few seconds ago. We have a question actually from one of our viewers, the
mhm.
Almighty Brother. How can we push our local governments to adapt to this? Very good question.
Yeah. Mhm.
Very good question. In my slide earlier, I have cited a business case that we have built, yung sa Taraca, Lanao del Sur. Taraca is a fourth class municipality. Fourth class, when you say fourth class, medyo talagang in the lower strata in terms of the economic structure, and
Mhm.
therefore may not be viable as an investment destination. But yet,
Mhm.
it was able to demonstrate ability and capacity to build such projects with the help of our office in terms of coming up with viable project proposals. So they were given a 200 million loan to build those
Wow,
solar powered projects.
that's
The
a
beauty
lot.
about LGUs this time around, probably you've heard about Mandana's ruling. Mandana's
Mhm.
ruling is the new policy that is now being implemented following decision of the Supreme Court, increasing the share of our local government units from their what previously was called as internal revenue allotment, now it's called national tax allotment.
Mhm.
Umakyat by 22% ang income ng mga LGUs. So lumaki ang kanilang pera ngayon. So that gives them opportunity to look at
Mm.
these projects as something that can be pursued by by local government in partnership with the local electric cooperative in their area, and a joint venture with the private sector so that they have the embedded source of electricity rather than just relying from the grid to power
That's
their
right.
communities.
Mm.
I'm glad you brought that up, Asek. No, that the government and the private sector must work together for these.
Yes.
Definitely.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Asek, for really taking the time to be here. Daghang kaayong salamat for enlightening us today. Thank you so much, Asek.
It's
We
an
truly
honor.
learned
Thank
a
you very
lot.
much.
Yes.
Well,
Parang
Carly,
thoroughly
that was
na-discuss lahat, no, Gray? Oo.
amazing. Yeah. We only had two for now, just for Monday. I
Mhm.
can't wait for the rest of the week. But I believe that we have a video message to be played, Carly.
Yes. And this, our next, not speaker, kasi may video greeting, hindi naman greetings, pero may video presentation din siya that we'll surely know more about the topic that we are going to discuss today. And this individual is a fellow Mindanaoan as well, but she is now based in Hong Kong. Our next guest has indeed an impressive list of credentials that would make us all fellow Mindanaoans proud. So, ladies and gentlemen, originally from Mindanao in General Santos City, to be specific, an assistant professor at the Division of Environment and Sustainability at the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. His research interests are on the rapid mitigation of climate change, accelerating sustainable and just energy transitions in climate mobilization. He is the author of several impressive research studies, including Strategies for Rapid Climate Mitigation, Wartime Mobilization as a Model for Action, published in the year 2016, Accelerating Sustainable Energy Transitions in Developing Countries, the Challenges of Climate Change and Sustainable Development from 2017, and Climate Actions, Transformative Mechanisms for Mobilization from 2018. Our speaker, of course, has worked with Land Bank of the Philippines, Japan's Institute for Global Environmental Strategies, Oxfam, and United Nations. He was a Balik scientist at the Philippines Department of Science and Technology, a Rachel Carson Fellow, and a visiting fellow at Harvard Kennedy School. He received degrees from universities in the Philippines, New Zealand, and Australia. His PhD is from the University of New South Wales in Sydney. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all watch this video all the way from Dr. Lawrence L. Delina.
Maayong adlaw kaninyong tanan. Ako si Lawrence Delina, Assistant Professor sa Division of Environment and Sustainability sa Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. Ang presyo sa solar energy has been falling and rooftop solar is rapidly growing in many parts of the world. Ang Mindanao is poised to take its share in the rooftop solar boom. So we really have that potential. Solar allows every Mindanaoan to generate their own solar electricity and sell their excess. So incentives to subsidize the cost of solar panels, which is unfortunately capital expensive to many, and friendly policy support, especially the full implementation of the net metering scheme, can help us achieve this. So the net metering scheme allows up to 100 kilowatt systems, about 20 pieces of the standard residential rooftop solar panels. Yet, sa kadaghan, the scheme is unheard of, and worse, it is an alien concept to many. Solar net metering can be likened to a bank account. So, mag-deposit ka og sa imuhang unused energy in terms of kilowatt hours, which is of course generated by your solar panels during the day onto the electric grid when your solar system generates more power than you need and consume. Sama sa bank account, your deposited energy is not sitting idly in a vault somewhere. So it is sold to other consumers in need of electricity at the time of your deposit. So when your system is not generating enough electricity, such as kung gabi, you can basically withdraw your energy provided by a power plant for you. So supporting a rooftop solar revolution through an aggressive net metering scheme sa Mindanao offers a number of benefits. Una, it helps in meeting our increasing demand for electricity, which kung dili nato ma-addressed effectively would result in brownouts, blackouts. And met electricity demand also puts pressure not only on the economy but also on our basic need for lighting. Ikaduha, tapping electricity from rooftop solar systems is cost-effective for utilities. Being locally generated, ang solar energy would cost lower than power purchased from a distant power plant. Katlo, it contributes to climate mitigation. So if we ramp up rooftop solar, it brings us closer to our international climate obligations. So to facilitate a solar power revolution sa Mindanao, kinahanglan nato nga i-face ang number of key hurdles. Una, lack of mechanisms para ma-strengthen ang public understanding sa energy o climate issues. So I really congratulate the Mindanao Goes Solar movement for taking the challenge to close the gaps in terms of addressing the dearth of information regarding Mindanao solar potential. I hope they will also advocate for the rapid deployment of the net metering scheme. Another is the absence of small-scale finance to support the purchase of solar panels. So for greater public engagement, solar systems must be widely, locally, and cheaply available. We need a dedicated marketplace so that these technologies can be introduced and scaled. So subsidies, grants, and small-scale financing schemes would be necessary para ma-attract nato ang mga homeowners to put up panels on their roofs, especially when their homes are already connected to the grid and when a new system is considered unnecessary expense. So these strategies, kanitanan, obviously require the infusion of capital and the strengthening of our institutions, labi na ang atong mga local governments who must lead the way to mobilize these resources. Small-scale solar businesses sa Mindanao must be given incentives. Pero sama sa ubang mga revolusyon, citizens have a bigger role to play. Kitang tanan, we need to realize that rooftop solar democratizes the way energy is generated, that it has economic benefits, it is an income generating source, of course, if there's a net metering scheme available, that it helps in reducing carbon pollution, it's a type of climate mitigation, it's climate action, and that it could reduce incidents of nightmares, brownouts, blackouts sa Mindanao, of which kita tanan ang apektado. Dagang salamat, mayong adlaw kaninyong tanan.
Second salamat, Dr. Delina, all the way from Hong Kong, I believe, right, Carly? Now, the
Yes,
points
tama ka.
of Dr. Delina were quite concise. He spoke about the cost of solar globally has gone down, but that we still need policy from the national government and support from the local governments to push the solar revolution. He also spoke briefly about the net metering scheme. He then touched on financing to make solar widely and locally and cheaply available to all Mindanaoans. Syempre, he talked a bit about climate change as well and how solar energy is actually a better alternative source of energy compared to the other ones that we have right now.
Yes, tama ka dyan, Rino. And we are also indeed very lucky that we can learn about these in more depth throughout our solar week. I also wanted to go back to what Dr. Delina said about how solar will help ease the pressure on the Mindanao grid and avoid more blackouts for us here. So, Ginoo ko no tama jud kayo na most especially we're in the middle of, sa mga estudyante ba karon gabuhat pa sila mga online tasks and then dili nila ma-save. Di ba? Dili nila ma-auto-save ang ilang mga drafts and grabe na kayo ang mga research ana. So it's really an aid for us to apply all these we have heard from today's discussion. And yes, let's work hand in hand para in the future hindi kawawa yung mga next generations pa to come. And I just want to point this out. I was also kilig about the fact that he congratulated us at the Mindanao Solar Movement for helping increase, of course, the awareness of the public on solar. And we're doing important work here, Gri. And I'm very honored to be part of this week-long program for us Mindanaoans. And yes, para sa ekonomiya, para sa Mindanao, for the climate, and for sustainable future.
Yes, Carly, truly it's just an honor to be here and to share information and to be a channel for Mindanaoans like us to know more about solar technology and solar energy and the kan kay tagakatunan just from today alone.
Yes.
Well, guys, I'm so sad to say this, but Carly, I have to let you go. Right? But I hope to see you in another episode and maybe in person.
Yes.
Cagayan de Oro. Thank you, Carly, for
Sabay
being
na jud
part
ka,
of
oo.
the first episode. Daghang kaayong salamat. Please follow her
Maraming
on social
salamat.
media, guys.
Yes, thank you so much, Gri, and thank you so much as well to the organizers and the Solar Week, of course, for inviting me, for the movement, for inviting me, and to the professional organizers for doing the legwork for Solar Week. I will surely grab every chance to promote solar, no? Labi na dili lang diri sa ato sa Davao man, Cagayan, pero sa tibuok Mindanao. And yes, daghang kay salamat Kino. I would just like to take this opportunity that hopefully you can all follow me on my social media platforms. That's Carly Chua on social media, both on Facebook and on Instagram and YouTube. Og magkita-kita tapuhon, mga higala, mga Dabawenyos, mga Mindanaons. Continue to be safe and healthy always. God bless us all.
Bye, Carly. Daghang salamat. I missed her already. Has it only been 2 seconds? Well, makamiss ko ng bubbly personality ni Carly. Daghang salamat, Carly. And guys, since you've all been here since the first minute of today's episode, I think it's about time to give out some prizes. Dun, 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 dun. And we're going to be giving out solar products for you guys, like solar lights, etc., etc. And by the way, before we start the game, if dili mo taga Cagayan de Oro, we'd be more than happy to ship your prizes to you. Just send us a private message on the page. All right, so it's time for some trivia. To all of you watching, here are the mechanics. First one to comment with the correct answer wins a pack of solar garden lights para sa mga plantitos for his or her home. And I guess we're ready now. Are you guys ready? All right, here we go. The first question is, the sun can provide as much energy to Earth as humanity uses in a day in exactly how many seconds? Do we have any answers? Do we have any answers? Can I see? Oh, okay. But first, let me read the options. A, 10 seconds. B, 5 seconds. C, 14 seconds. Oh, okay. We have an answer here from Manisa Dabalos. 14 seconds. Letter C. Is this correct? That is correct. The answer is letter C. Congratulations to our first winner, Manisa. But don't fret, we have more questions to go. Second question is, Mindanao has the lowest electrification rate among the Philippines' 3 major islands. True or false? Do we have an answer? I'm reading from the live comments as I see. True or false? We've got the Almighty Brother. His answer is true. And the answer is, we also have Jico Paye, who also said true. Do we have other answers? Joanne Suliano Sheng also said true. And Maria Leila Rico says false. And Love Gemo says false as well. Okay, let's reveal the answer. The answer is true. The answer is true. So for those nga una nakatubag nga true, sa imuha ihatag ang prize. Congratulations. And we have our third question. Third question is, the net metering is the first non-fiscal incentive mechanism fully implemented under the Renewable Energy Act of, through the installation of solar photovoltaic panels up to 100 kilowatts. House owners and commercial establishments can now partly satisfy their electricity demand by themselves. What is the answer? A, Renewable Energy Act of 2008, B, RE Act of 2010, and C, RE Act of 2020. Chico Paya says A. We have, Manisa Davalo says B. Joanne Sheng says B. Charlemagne Alviola says B. The Almighty Brother is B. Do we have one more? Okay. All right. The correct answer is letter A. Renewable Energy Act of 2008. Naman yata nakatubag. Yes, na nakatubag. And congratulations to all the winners. The prizes will be sent to you. If you're not from Cagayan de Oro, please feel free to message the official page and we will be mailing you the prizes. Daghang salamat! Now, for all of our viewers, you're already seeing the schedule of Solar Week 2022 on your screens. Take a look, guys. There you have it. And if you want to know more about net metering, kadaghan ni siya gibalik-balik karong adlaw. Net metering. That'll be discussed on Thrifty Thursday. And about climate and sustainability, that's on Feel Good Friday. Tomorrow we go technical with every basic thing you need to know of solar technology. So tune in, guys, and you can even ask questions from our experts. So that importante kayo that we really ask the experts and dili mag-share of fake news, dili lang magsalig sa mga unreliable sources. And that's very important, so we make informed decisions. Okay, so again, we'll see you again tomorrow and for the rest of the week for Mindanao Solar Solar Week 2022. Again, Solar Week 2022 is brought to us by the Mindanao Go Solar movement, which rallies all Mindanaoans to move towards a clean energy transition in the region. All right, guys, we'll see you guys tomorrow, same time, same place. This has been Grayan Mendoza Araya. Have a great day ahead.